Everybody, uh, just gonna give it a few seconds to let people trickle in here. We'll start in about a minute. Okay, I think this should be enough time as people trickle in. Awesome. So let's get started. Everybody, thanks for joining me today. My name is Vasco. I work at Parallels here as a part of the business development team. Today, what we're going to be discussing is something that's top of mind for a lot of IT professionals, and that's how to reduce complexity and licensing costs with Parallels RAS. So the goal of today's webinar is to just show how Parallels RAS could serve as a simple and cost-effective alternative to your current setup. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to have my colleagues in the chat that will answer any immediate questions you might have. So please feel free to chime in. Without further ado, let's get started. Before we dive in, we'll take a look at the quick agenda that we'll cover today. We'll start off by looking at the rise of the hybrid workforce, specifically diving into what it looks like today and where companies are going. We'll look into the complexities and high costs of traditional VDI. And then we'll also talk about how Parallels RAS addresses those complexities and costs. We will talk a little bit about Parallels RAS as far as how it looks in terms of its architecture and management. And then we'll move on to a quick hands-on demo where we'll be launching an application, launching a virtual desktop, and looking at the Parallels console. And finally, we'll wrap it up with any additional questions that may surface and next steps that you guys, in case you guys are interested and want to either start a trial, look into Parallels RAS a little bit more yourself. All right. So first things first, before we get started, I think it's really important to understand, the state that the workforce is in and the direction that it's going. So what we're looking at here is Parallels conducted a survey at the State of Cloud Computing, where we engaged with 600 IT professionals around the world to just get a good understanding of their organization and their cloud journey. If we look at the left, we see some things that really stand out, right? Most teams are running some sort of cloud solution, whether it's single, multi-cloud, or hybrid. We see that makes up for about 97% of the statistics for the people that we were talking to that were part of the survey. The other 3% would be some people that remain running on-prem. This could be caused by a multitude of reasons, right? This could be caused by the pandemic or just the rise of remote work and having access to specific instances through your computer, right? If we look at the figure on the right, we can get a good understanding of the direction that teams are going. Looking at the figure, there's some things that really stand out. We see that 14% are decisively staying on cloud, while 14% have made their mind to return back on-prem, with about 27% picking hybrid and about 46% being undecided. This tells us a few things, right? This tells us that there's been a big surge to push to remote work, and a lot of teams have fully embraced it. But there might have been some friction as well. Some teams deciding that, hey, I might want to revert back to on-prem, or some teams kind of being a little bit in the middle and considering other solutions. All this to say, and ask the question why. Why are people not solely happy with being on the cloud? What's causing these discrepancies, and what are some of the issues that these teams are facing? when we're talking about that, we can take a second closer look at where the infrastructure should live and some of the pros and cons regarding each specific station, right? So we have four possible solutions. We have the on-prem, cloud, multi-cloud, and hybrid. If your infrastructure lives on premise, you have a lot of control and a lot of predictability on cost, but it might be a little bit more difficult to scale. And looking into the cloud, it kind of covers that issue that a lot of people might be facing on-prem with scaling, and you'll have access to the latest tech because that's the direction that a lot of teams are going. But sometimes we run into vendor lock-in, or it might be a little bit more difficult to manage the cost. We also have multi-cloud, which is another option. So multi-cloud, it would be like cloud, but to the X degree. It's definitely made to scale and access. You're avoiding the vendor lock-in, but managing multiple cloud servers, it could be a little bit more complex, and it might require a little bit more manpower. Lastly, we have hybrid that we can look at, which is a middle ground between the cloud and on-prem. Easy to scale and access. You can predict cost and control. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, but a lot of some teams that are using hybrid solutions currently have noticed, that it could be inconsistent for users. The point is here that there really is no one size fits all for the solution. Every approach really does come with a trade-off, and that's why flexibility and choice are key here. Parallels really tries to lean into that so that you're able to run Parallels RAS either on-prem, on the cloud, or anywhere in between. Awesome. So now we've talked a little bit about kind of the state of the workforce today and some of the advantages and disadvantages of where infrastructure should live. I think it's also important to take a step back and revisit that state of cloud computing survey, where we also asked for some insight on what are some of the current challenges that VDI users are facing. Looking at the numbers, we see one thing that's very obvious, right? One of the main issues that VDI users are facing is they're struggling with rising costs. Whether it's renewal or hidden fees, this is ultimately causing people to seek out VDI alternatives and explore other options around them. Second biggest would be either a lack of integration or uncertain product roadmap. This comes down to, it's the lack of future support. So with concern for future support, we're looking at teams struggling with the complexity of their current solution and needing some support to make sure that they get the full functionality out of it. Not having that could result in teams looking into other solutions as well. And then, like I mentioned, we have the uncertain product roadmap and lack of integrations. Not being able to connect to specific systems could cause a little bit of friction as well, which also kind of adds a little bit to those challenges that some traditional VDI users might be facing. All right. And so we just went over, where IT teams stand regarding VDI today, the state of the workforce. So now let's finally jump into a little bit about Parallels and what we have to offer. So if you look at the bottom, we see, we have a suite of products. Starting on the left, we have Parallels Desktop, which is essentially what everybody kind of knows and loves and made Parallels the brand that it is today. And run Windows on Macs, which is great for smaller deployments. We have Parallels RAS, which can run on-prem, cloud, or hybrid. This is our main bread and butter here. It gives you flexibility, control, cost management for teams. It's a flexible way for your existing infrastructure to access your existing infrastructure in a unified management experience across all of your environments. We also have Parallels DAS. So this is built for organizations that want to provide a simple and flexible access to desktops. We have Parallel Secure Workspace, which gives users access to applications and data through any HTML5 browser without really needing the use of a VPN. And lastly, we have the Parallels browser isolation. So this acts as kind of a cloud native gateway, adding an extra layer of protection while you're browsing. Like I mentioned, Parallels RAS is our bread and butter here. So for today's conversation, we will be focusing on Parallels RAS as a simple and cost-effective alternative to VDI solutions. So looking into Parallels RAS, let's take a look at the architecture. On the right side, you can see the resources that you can deploy, right? So whether that's an RDS host, a remote PC, a VDI desktop, you have a wide list of things that you can deploy. In the center, we're looking at the console overview and its capabilities. Here you can see things like monitoring, reporting. You can see load balancing features. You can see that it has a built-in user portal. Extremely easy and simple to access with simplicity as the forefront of the user experience. And then on the left, we can see the channels that you can use to access Parallels RAS, right? So you can access it through HTML5, Windows, Mac OS, Linux, mobile, thin clients, really made to be as flexible and accessible as possible. So we talked a little bit about the architecture and management of what Parallels RAS is. It's also important to understand why Parallels RAS, right? Interesting. So the slide isn't loading, but I'm happy to talk through it. So essentially, there's a few reasons why Parallels RAS is something that a lot of IT teams turn to. One is the simplicity. So we're easy to deploy, configure, and maintain. We're a very flexible solution, meaning that we have lots of seamless integrations to mesh well with your choice and infrastructure. Our total cost of ownership is low, so we're cost optimized to reduce any unnecessary expense. We pride ourselves in having a concurrent licensing model and really avoiding the use of any hidden fees. We also try to have a very seamless user experience. So it's able to be accessed from anywhere, from any device, and on any modern browser. And lastly, Parallels RAS, one of the most important parts that we pride ourselves in is security. This is meticulously designed with a strong focus on security. We have built-in security features like MFA and SSO to protect your data, users, and infrastructure at every level. So I highlighted a little bit of the benefits of Parallels RAS. I think it's also important to understand how we compare to other VDI solutions, right? So we can compare it to Citrix, which I think is the status quo for VDI today. Looking at the side-by-side comparison, there's three things that I really want to point out here. One is cost, one is simplicity, and the other is flexibility. So when we're comparing licenses to traditional VDI, we see that Parallels has one sole license to access the platform and get its full functionality. We're focused on being fully transparent, not having any hidden fees. As far as simplicity goes, we see that not only does Parallels RAS have support, but we also have a simple training approach and free resources online, right? This makes it so that you are getting the full functionality of our product without needing to be an actual technical pro and allocating X amount of resources to make sure that you are getting what you paid for out of our product. And flexibility. So like I mentioned earlier, Parallels is meant to fit the mold of your team and your team's needs. Some VDI solutions are migrating and pushing for people to move on to the cloud. Parallels RAS stands out in the way of we try to mold to your systems. We're not trying to push you in any specific direction that you might not be a fit for. This ties back into being able to run on-prem, hybrid, or on the cloud to just be as frictionless as possible. Perfect. So in the earlier slides, one of the things that we saw was that one of the main challenges that VDI users are facing is the rise of costs, right? So I think it's important to double click on how Parallels RAS addresses this compared to other traditional VDI. So if we're looking at the image, one of the best comparisons here to the idea is the idea of the iceberg. With an iceberg, you can see a lot of what's sitting on the top of the water, but you have no idea how big that iceberg is and what's sitting on the bottom. If we're looking at the image, we see that Parallels RAS on the right in the blue is a smaller iceberg overall, right? So we have our single licensing model, and we are also, we require minimal training. We try to have as little hidden fees as possible, if none, right? Compared to Citrix or other traditional VDI alternatives, they do have their base licensing model, but it comes with a plethora of other things, additional costs that may surface, right? Whether that's some additional trainings, additional support, all of these things do eventually add up, and they aren't essentially what you initially kind of budgeted for. All this being said, you can see that the total cost of ownership when we're comparing Parallels RAS compared to any other traditional VDI is significantly cheaper and a little bit more transparent. Moving on to kind of where Parallels RAS sits, one of the questions that we get a lot from our IT teams evaluating the platform is, how well does Parallels integrate with the tools and infrastructure we already have? So this slide, it speaks to the maturity and credibility of the Parallels RAS ecosystem. We're tightly connected to a lot of these brands. We can see here we got Nutanix, we got ControlUp, we have VMware, we have Microsoft Hyper-V. We have lots of great logos here that are a part of our ecosystem, which ultimately means better integrations, stronger support, and ultimately more choice for you and your customers. So now what we're going to do here is we are going to dive into a little bit of what Parallels RAS looks like in action. If we click here, if we're looking at our screen, we see a few things, right? This is going to be our UI, our user interface. We can launch applications very quickly and easily. If we click on the application, we can see that we can load up something like WordPad for this example. Loading up WordPad, we see it's super easy. Remote application here. Here we can see that it works just fine. Right, and then you have the full functionality. Right, boom, uses that. We also have the ability to launch virtual desktops. So if we click on session-based VDI, we could see here that it's going to launch, it's going to connect and launch essentially its own virtual desktop here. We're logging in. I'm on a Mac right now, and look at that. I'm on the Windows. We can see here a few things, right? We can access Google. And we have the full functionality of whatever you might need on here. Create zoom, whatever the case may be. Oh, here we go. So this is what you might see, right? We can launch Google. And just get full functionality of whatever you might need. We can access Microsoft here as well. So lots of functionalities, lots and a secure way to have a virtual desktop. Now going back to the RAS user interface, we can finally jump into something that one of the more important components of Parallels RAS, and that's essentially the console. Let's connect real quickly. So as we launch the console, we can see a few things here, right? We have everything that you might need here on the left side, from your farm to your sessions, load balancing, universal printing, scanning, you name it, right? As far as the farm, you can get a lot of insight on the farm here. Sessions, I think, is also very cool because you can see essentially any statistics that you might have on specific users and their sessions. For example, if you double click, you can see the latency, you can see bandwidth, you can see duration. Lots of great features here. Like I said, we have load balancing, universal printing, and publishing. So what I'm going to go through here is just show you how easily and quickly you can publish an application, right? So if you click on add here at the bottom, you can publish an application very, very quickly. RD session hosts, and you can click through installed applications. And just like that, we can launch Zoom, enable, and just like that, we have published Zoom Workplace into our VDI solution. Click finish there, and we're all set. Along with publishing, we also, one of the other things that I really that a lot of IT teams like to highlight and really look into is, monitoring and reporting, right? So if we look at reports, we have a wide array of reports that you have access to. With session activity, we have the device reports, we have server reports, application reports, you name it. You have full visibility of exactly what's going on to get a good view of the scope of your current system and where it stands. This is a very, very quick high-level overview of Parallels RAS and the system. Happy to jump into it a little bit more deeply, a little bit down the line. So now, let's do this. So with that being said, today we went over a little bit about Parallels RAS and what the current workforce looks like in today's state. We talked about how Parallels RAS can help teams with regarding complexity and cost. We compared Parallels RAS to traditional VDI today, and we also took a second to jump into how Parallels operates, how we work, and with a quick hands-on demo. I want to leave you guys with this final slide to just thank you for taking the time to sit with me to understand a little bit more of Parallels RAS and what we do. What I'm leaving you with here is essentially my email. If you are interested in learning a little bit more, please feel free to contact me. Happy to get you in touch with the team to have a high-level demo on what we do and understand if we could be a good fit for you and your team. one of the things to highlight here is that, yeah, we again focus and pride ourselves in our cost effectiveness and our flexibility, whether that's on-prem, hybrid, or on cloud. Happy to talk through how we could kind of fit that mold. If you're interested in learning a little bit more of yourself and doing some research on your own, you can always look at parallels.com /products /RAS. There you can get a little bit more resources. You can start a free trial and get your hands on it yourself. With that being said, appreciate everybody for taking the time to join me on this call today. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Thank you guys so much.